Starting our countdown with number 12 of our top tips, tricks, and helpful hints for wiring your dollhouse, we have the ever-inspiring Lick Your Bulb. I get a lot of calls from customers and miniaturists that have just received a new light fixture in the mail, and they'll call me and say that it doesn't work. One in particular is the ceiling fan that I have, and I bought a lot of them about 10-15 years ago, and I have had a number of people call and tell me that the lights don't work when they first get it. Well, it's very, very common for packages like this, especially ones that have been sitting in storage for a long time, for the bulbs not to work. Now, this is a non-working ceiling fan, but when you open up any fan or any ceiling light that you've just received, you need to test it and make sure that everything is working. One easy way to do it is using my 9-volt battery tester. Taking this fan out of the box, I'm just going to put the clips of my 9-volt tester, one on each of the pins coming off the plug here. And we see that only one light is working. This is an old fixture so that I can't unscrew the tulip globes. The new ones that you would have, you normally can unscrew the globes, and then you can get your fingers around the incandescent bulbs quite easily and be able to tighten the thing up. But in this case, I would recommend that you get one of the bulb extractors that Circuit makes, and it makes it quite easy for tightening this bulb up. One end has a rubber section on it. The other end is a steel or metal tube that has splits on here so that it will slide over the bulb. I use the rubber end first because I can just get enough friction over there that I can turn this thing down, and I'm going in a clockwise motion to get it in there to make sure that it's making contact and it will come on. The other thing that I always recommend, though, is to take it out first. And then, as the title says, I'll usually lick it. But probably the better way is to take your sponge and to go ahead and just wipe the bottom off. In shipping and in storage, you'll get a corrosion that develops on the bottom of the pin on the light bulb itself, and it'll keep it from making a good connection, or it'll flicker on you. So I recommend that you take each of the bulbs out, then go ahead and screw them back in, and we'll do the same thing to this one. Going counterclockwise to take it out, and then we'll use our sponge, just wipe the bottom of it and put it back in here. There we go. And now we have the light that's working. Continuing our countdown now with number 11 of our top tips, tricks, and helpful hints, we have how to fold our tape wire. Our number 11 tip is on the use of flat tape wire and how to fold it properly. One thing that you need to learn is how to run a continuous line of tape wire without cutting it. In some of the books that we've had in the past, they tell you to run at 1 inch above the floor and then around all of the door frames that you have. So you're going up one side of the door frame, across the top, down the other side, and at every intersection there, in the past, we generally have cut that and overlapped and made a seam either with brads or small grommets, or in what I recommend, the large grommets, to make an electrical path all the way around that doorway. But the better way is to go ahead and run your tape wire without cutting it at all. Look at this piece. I cut this out of 3/8 inch Baltic birch, which would be typical of what you would have in the dollhouse. And what I tell everybody they need to do before they apply any of the flat tape is to prime all of their wood. So I've used a primer on here, and I've lightly sanded the primer, so this is good and smooth, and it's ready for our tape run to go on here. I also put a line on here where I've used our gauge, and I've marked it at the 1-inch mark, or actually where the top of the tape would run all the way across here. So we're going to go ahead and run a piece of tape wire across here. And then, as it says in all of the books, is to come up across the door over on this side and either come down there. But I'm going to show you how we can do any angle that you want. So we're actually going to run the tape wire on this angle and then come down this way and then run it across this way onto the floor. So we'll have one continuous run. We'll then come up over the door and over the top. Pre-cut this to what should fit all the way around. Let me go ahead and pull the backing off, and we'll start by running it across the top, and I'm going to bring it down about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the angle that we have here for our roof line, if you will. I'll go ahead and I'll grab our razor blade again and just smooth that down so it's nice and smooth. And as I said, what we do first is to fold it back on itself in the directly opposite from the path that it's going to take. So we're on this edge here, and I'm going up to the top, and then I'll go ahead and line that up so that it's following this line that would be going up that way. And we'll go ahead and we'll just push down this little corner. And then I need to hold the edge here, but I want to go perpendicular because we're running on a perpendicular line, and I want to get it as far to the top as I can so that that fold is outside of the overlay of the two tapes. And I'll go ahead and crease that, and then go ahead and bring it down and line up the edge of the tape there, and we can just come on down, line it up, and we'll just go lightly. Now we're going to go across this way, and we want the top of the clear part of the tape to follow this line that's on here. Again, we're going to take our fold and we're going to go directly across there in the opposite direction, and I lined up, let me use a pencil here. You have the clear part of the tape right here, and I lined it up right so that the fold starts right where our pencil line is. And we're going off that direction, which is the opposite direction of this. And I'll go ahead and crease that. And I'll put my razor at the edge here so I can get a crease onto the tape wire, and then fold it back on itself right there, and I'm going to line it up to the line at the same time. And we'll come across this way, and there we've got it lined over to the door. I'll use our plastic razor blade to smooth that down. We'll smooth it down this way. Now we want to go up and around the door. Again, we go the opposite direction first, and I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch space here. So we'll just go that way, and we'll crease it that way, and then we'll put a little bit more of a tail on it this way to bring that all the way down, and I'm at a 90-degree across the tape there to get my crease for my fold. And then I'm going to come straight up and line up the edge of the clear part there and come on up the rest of the way right up to there. And we can use my razor to smooth it out. Now we just need to go across this way on the door. And again, we're going to go a little bit higher. Looks like I could have made my tape a little bit longer. And put my crease there. And then get my tail and crease the tape so it's easy to fold it over on itself. And then line up the bottom part of the run and come the rest of the way over the top of the door. We'll smooth that out. All we have is our tail that we need to glue it down. And we can either use the tape and go right across the edge of it, or we can use a little bit of our glue and put it down. Again, the glue takes a little bit for it to go down, and sometimes you can just put a little bit of a weight on there, but I like the glue because it doesn't add any more surface on here. Moving on with number 10 of our top tips and tricks, we introduced the plastic razor blade and Sid's tool. The first item we're going to talk about is Sid's glue stick. It's simply a plastic stick. It's flat on one end and it's pointed on the other like a toothpick. It gives you a lot of ability to take small amounts of glue and apply it into particular areas that you need to just put a little dab of glue in. I use the flat side quite a bit for putting wire down on an edge here. If I take a little bit of glue, and I'll just put a little bit there and a little bit down there, I can come back with the flat part of the stick and I can just roll this right down the edge. It picks up that little puddle of glue that I put down there and runs it, and I'm switching from one side to the other, and we can end up with this being perfectly smooth all the way to the edge. There's a little bit of glue there we can grab, and I'll just put it in the corner here. And we've got a nice, neat application of the glue and holding the wire right down into the corner. A second application of my glue stick I use for the liquid tape, and I can apply a small amount of the liquid tape over a wire that I've twisted together and I want to cover it. Instead of using shrink tube, I use this liquid tape most of the time. I just put a little bit of it on the end of my glue stick and just wrap it right around the wire, and we get a real nice protection of the stripped part of the wire or the bare wire that's on there. And it works every bit as good as a shrink tube. The next thing I want to mention is the little plastic razor blade. These little plastic razor blades are very handy. I like them because they're stiff enough to be able to put some pressure down. As you can see, if I put them over each other, they're exactly the same size. So I can take an existing scraper that I have and I can put the plastic razor blade in place of it. And if you want to use it for pulling up some tape that you had on here, we can go across here. We can just go ahead and pull up the tape that was on there. It's great for removing wallpaper. The advantage of the razor blade by itself, I showed in the previous video, for smoothing out our tape run that's on here. And it really does a nice job, much better than credit cards. I very seldom use the credit cards, but I do suggest that you keep a stack of these handy. They're great for wallpapering because you have a large surface that you can go across the wall with the smooth out wallpaper. But for the type of work that I'm doing, the little plastic razor blade is very, very handy. As we continue our countdown, we find ourselves at the top of our single digits with number 9, using joint compound and adhesive caulk. What I want to show you is the joint compound, and the one that I recommend or I use is very readily available at Lowe's or Home Depot, and it's used as a drywall compound for patching holes in the drywall. It's very easy to work with. It's pretty much a thick paste that you can work with. Where I would use it is where we've made a trench or a trough to bury our wires from a light, ceiling light, or any type of a light that we've attached from the ceiling below, and we've run a track or a trench for our wires to be buried in, and then connect to the electrical tape run that we have, such as on this demo piece that I take to the shows with me when I teach my classes. Very simple. We just take our plastic stick that we have. I'm going to put a little bit of the drywall compound on the stick, and we're just going to apply it into this hole. A little trough all the way along here. And we'll just run it down and bury our wire inside there. And go the 90 degrees here. I'll come back and just kind of clean it off. Now, I generally will do 2 applications of this so that I can get it perfectly smooth, so we don't have to be too careful of what we're doing there. And I can see I should have probably put a little drop of glue in here to seal that wires down to the bottom, but there we go. Let that dry. This dries pretty quickly. In a couple of hours you can come back. You can do a light sanding on it. You can see at this end where I have already filled it, I sanded it lightly, put a second coat on, and that's perfectly smooth all the way across, buries our wire, and we can come across and actually paint or wallpaper over the wall or where we have this seam, and you'll never see that we made a trench in there and buried our wires. Showing you a similar situation on the board that we ran our flat tape wire on, I also use it for sealing the edges. Now, I actually have done this little strip right here. Again, I'm going to use my plastic glue stick, and I'm going to come across the edge going this way just to put a little bit of a deposit of the drywall compound all the way across here. And then we'll come across, and I want to run just the width of the flat part of the blade and make it run on the top of the flat tape and over the edge about half that distance. And that will just make a nice line all the way across here. We're going to take the excess and on the top of the tape and just run it off of there. And I'll go ahead and get rid of some of this. Again, this drywall compound dries pretty quickly. When that has dried, I'm just going to take a piece of sandpaper and very lightly sand it, as I have done over on this side here. And it's actually, with just the one application that I did here, we can go ahead and paint it. I can show you on this piece, which is our demo piece, again, that I take to shows. On this side down here, we have the flat tape wire that ran all the way across. I went ahead and I applied the drywall compound on the top and the bottom and put 2 applications, lightly sanded it, and then painted this. And you can barely tell that there was ever any run of tape along here. It makes a nice smooth surface. The second thing I want to talk to you about is our adhesive caulk or sealant. I picked up a clear one this time from Lowe's, and the thing that you want to make sure is it does not have silicone in it, and that it says that it is that you're able to paint over it. This says that it is paintable, and being clear, I thought that would be an asset. But for covering cracks on your dollhouse on the edges, if I go back to my board here, you can see where I have run a wire down the edge of the back wall and the side wall. I can come across here with the sealant and just run a bead all the way down. Then I'm going to come back with my glue stick. Now I took this glue stick and I actually sanded the sides of it just a little bit using a sanding block, and I sanded the edge of the stick so that I get a narrower, flat section on here so that I don't have the full size on there. And I can just run this straight down, and it covers Then we can come back and we can paint that over on the corner, and the wire completely disappears. At number 8 of our tips, tricks, and helpful hints for wiring your dollhouse, we have the Sacrificial Board. If you have watched any of my videos, you will notice that I do a lot of my soldering and prep work on a small piece of wood. That piece of wood is our next helpful tip. I take my piece of wood with me when working at other people's homes too, and I find it very, very useful almost on everything that I'm doing in the shop or at other people's homes. I am actually lost without it. It is nothing more than a 1/2-inch piece of plywood that I've cut from plywood that I have in my workshop. On one side, I do a lot of soldering and assembling of small pieces. I use it as a sacrificial piece to cut, drill, and grind on. But wait, as seen on TV, there's more. On the other side, I glue a piece of sandpaper. This is 120 grit paper. I find it is one that I prefer to use as a medium grit on things, and I'll take my board and I'll just glue it on the one side. You'll be surprised on how many times you use that sandpaper side. Number 7 in our list is a quick fix for your junction splice and outlets. Here is a real cool cheap trick to try for repairing all of those miniature wall outlets that no longer work. Simply pull the outlet out from the wall and insert a small piece of solder into the 2 holes left from the nails on the back of the outlet. Now reinsert the outlet back into the same holes, and 9 times out of 10 the outlet will work again. Also add a little glue to the back of the outlet to make it hold. This works on any of Circuit Concepts features that have nails inserted into your flat tape runs, such as the junction splice or the ceiling canopy. You can see over here that we have our wall with 2 outlets on here. This light is working, this light is not working. It's kind of frustrating because after a while, most of these outlets stop working. And if you come in here and you twist it, you usually can get a contact to come through on there. It's a simple fix, is simply take something to pull this out of the wall and then cut yourself a couple pieces of solder. You can see the nails that are on the back of the outlet itself go into the flat tape wire that we have run across the wall and underneath the wallpaper. The 2 holes that were left there have become too large, really, from unplugging and plugging in the outlet. But if we remove the outlet and put in a piece of solder in that hole and a piece of solder in this hole, and then I'm going to take our plug, add a little bit of glue to the back of it, just a little bit of glue on the back, and put it back into the same holes that it came from. We'll push that in. We can trim the little ends of solder that are here. And then plug in the light and hope that it works. Halfway through our list of the top 12 is number 6, stripping wire. The easiest and quickest way to strip your wire pieces is not with your fingernails. Simply use your soldering iron. All we need to do is take our soldering iron and clean the tip of the soldering iron in our brass ball to take the excess of solder off of the tip. Then take our piece of wire that we need to strip, set it down onto our work board, put the flat part of your tip on the wire, leave it for just a few seconds, and then pull back on the wire from underneath the soldering iron, and you get a nice, perfectly stripped wire. Doing that again, simply put your iron down onto the wire, leave it for a couple of seconds so that it softens the Kynar insulation over the wire, and then pull back on the wire and it completely strips it. Second alternative is these wire cutters. These come from Micro Mart, and they're for stripping the small gauge wires that we're using. If you notice, it has the gauge on here. This wire size is 32 AUG. So you want the second setting that's on here. The smallest that this goes is 25 or 30 AUG on there, 25 millimeters. So I'm going to put it into the second one. The trick here is to close down on the pliers, give it a little bit of a twist up and down, and then just pull it straight away, and you get a perfect strip every time. I like to use the soldering iron because one of the disadvantages of using any of these cutters is that you have the possibility of nicking that wire. And if you nick it, when you bend it, you'll break the wire off at that point. When you use the soldering iron, you don't have that as a problem. Helpful clamps is at our number 5 position. Here's probably my cheapest and most helpful tip. I'm always looking for good clamps that will work with gluing miniatures. The use of your grandmother's clothespins is what I use, and I use them quite a bit. You can buy a bag of 50 clothespins from Lowe's or any hardware store, Ace hardware store, or a number of other places. Very, very inexpensive. And these silly little clothespins make a very, very good clamp. The only thing that I do to them to make them a little bit better is when they come, they have this V shape at the tip, and you can't get up close to something that you're going to be gluing. So I take my saw and I cut the top off of all of the clothespins, and these then make a very, very good clamp. How I got started using these is in making my ceiling fan putting on the individual blades, I can easily take the clamp and go directly over and hold it in place while the glue dries. A second helpful tip works when attaching a ceiling chandelier, and I use just a little stick, a molding piece that you might have. You want to cut it about 1/4 of an inch longer than the distance from the chandelier base that you're going to be putting into place. Then you just use this as a support piece to hold that chandelier cowling up against the ceiling until the glue dries. A very quick, simple clamp idea. Clothespins, stick. Moving ever closer to our number 1, and at number 4 is liquid tape. Once you try this tip, you will never go back to using shrink tube. I'm talking about using liquid tape in place of shrink tube. I use liquid tape in all of my projects, and you can see how in most any of my online videos. Liquid tape seals and waterproofs your electrical connections. Although it is a thick, rubbery liquid going on, it dries to a hard, insulating, protective, and non-conductive coating. Although I solder most all of my connections, liquid tape is strong enough to seal tightly around twisted wires that haven't been soldered, keeping them from coming apart. So it's a definite alternative to using your shrink tube, and I feel it works far better. All of you have used shrink tube, and at one time or another have twisted your wires together only to find that you forgot to put the shrink tube over the wire that you were going to use the shrink tube on. By using liquid tape, you can take the wire that's been twisted together and simply open up the material. It has a self-applicating brush on here, and I can just dab it on both sides all the way around this thing. Go as thick as you want, really. It takes about 2 minutes to set up to where you can put a second coat on if you feel that you need to put a second coat, but it takes about 3 to 4 hours to completely dry. Although the liquid tape comes with its own applicator for dispensing or putting the liquid tape over your wire, trying to use it inside the dollhouse is pretty difficult, just as trying to use your shrink tube inside the dollhouse is almost impossible to use. This is a whole lot easier when you tie in the glue stick that we've talked about previously. And I use the glue stick for applying this to the tape wire joints that I need to cover with protective coating inside the dollhouse. The liquid tape that I buy is the GB brand, which is Gardner Bender company. I find it works the best. There are a number of liquid tapes available for you to purchase. You may find one that works quite well for you, but I've had the best luck with the GB brand. Number 3 introduces us to my number 1 bestseller, Bam Bam. I have received more compliments and positive reviews on Bam Bam than on anything else I have ever made. Earlier this year, I received this email. The Bam Bam tool is perfect. In my opinion, it is in the top 10 inventions of all time. Right there with paper clips, Post-it notes, and Velcro. Bam Bam was designed to insert little grommets into the tape wire and to eliminate all of those extremely small brads that have been used for years. It is actually a nail set tool made by Spring Tool in Washington State. I have it modified by the Career Center at the local high school, so a small grommet can be inserted over the end. These are the brads that have been used for years. This is the large grommet that I sell, and the surface area is significantly more than what these little brads provide. If you have any brads, I recommend that you throw them away and switch automatically to grommets, either the small or the large. My Bam Bam tool is made for the large grommets. If you do not know what Bam Bam is or how it works, you need to go to my video tutorial on how to use Bam Bam. Second, from our top choice of tips, tricks, and helpful hints for wiring your dollhouse, and at number 2 is Dollhouse testing tools. When I started this video, testing tools was my number 1 first choice and most important tip. For troubleshooting and verifying the integrity of your wiring, one needs testing tools. To better understand the value of having good testing tools, take a look at my tutorial, Dollhouse Electrical Testing Tools. All of these tools I have custom designed and make specifically for working on dollhouses and displays that use a 12-volt power source. I receive lots of calls from individuals that can't get their lights to work in their project. When I start asking questions, however, they have nothing to check the wiring with. That makes it very difficult to determine what needs to be fixed. Everyone should have at least the first 2 tools. They are inexpensive and very simple to use. The first one I want to talk about is the 9-volt tester. 9-volt tester I came up with because when I was doing trade shows, there were so many people that came to my table from other dealers wanting to test the lights that they were buying to see if they worked. I came up with this 9-volt tester, which is nothing more than a battery clip for a 9-volt battery and 2 test probes. I simply wire the wire leads to the test probes and connect a 9-volt battery to it, and we can test our fixtures when we go to a show. I can take this lamp, for instance, just put the clips on the ends. If the light comes on, we can see if any of the bulbs don't work or if the fixture works at all. This is something that I tell everyone that they should have. You should test every light fixture in your dollhouse before you install it to make sure that the light works before you put it into the electric wiring that you've already put in place. The second simple tool that we need to talk about is the 12-volt probe tester. The ones that are most common that you probably have is the circuit 12-volt probe tester. It looks like that. When you get it, you pull off the cap. You've got 2 pins that are in here. You're going to stick those 2 pins into your tape wire to determine whether you have 12 volts present that's in on your tape that's present. The other one is the one that I have had in the past and is sold by Houseworks and a number of other places. They have the same pin distance, but I found that trying to test your wire leads, you have a very narrow area that you can work with for this light to go on. If you have your tape run underneath wallpaper, for instance, it's very difficult for this probe to touch the 2 copper strips in that tape run because they're so close together. So I've come up with one that is centered at the center point of the 2 runs. And whether you're using Circuit's tape or my tape, I'm right on the center position of the black and the red that's on here. So you've got a much bigger range to be able to test and make sure that this probe works. The last one I want to talk to you about is the Dollhouse Electrical Test Box. I developed this about 10 years ago. I've never sold a whole lot of them. A lot of people think they're too expensive, but it is made specifically for the dollhouse. I designed it, and I actually wire and make every single one of them in-house. This is what I start with, is just a utility box. I drill out all of the holes that are in there so it will fit the components. This shows you the circuitry as it is completed. It has a 2450 battery in it that periodically does need to be replaced, but it should last for a year or two. It's only to power the buzzer that's in that unit. It has the 3 LEDs on the end, and when it's complete, this is what you have. It comes with the test probes, and we just plug in a test probe on red to red and the black to black. It has a toggle switch. When it's in the down position, it measures voltage. The two distinctive things that this box does is that it measures voltage to make sure that you have 12 volts coming into the dollhouse. But beyond that, it will determine whether you have AC or DC. If you're going to start using LEDs in the dollhouse, you need to be using a DC power source, and you need to know which side of the wiring is positive and which side is negative. This box will tell you quite easily. In other words, the box is extremely simple to use. It does not break down, and it's very difficult to get even the fuse that's in here to blow because you've connected it incorrectly. It does what it's supposed to, and it doesn't do anything that it's not supposed to. So it is a very versatile and relatively inexpensive tool for you to have in your toolbox. Finally, we come to our number one spot. While working on this video, I kept asking myself, what do I offer in tips, tricks, or helpful hints that no one else that I know of has to offer? I definitely have a uniquely different line of products for adding electricity to one's dollhouse or display. Items that I have custom designed and assemble right in my own home. Yet, that is not the best answer to my question. I have at this moment 15 video tutorials on different aspects for wiring a dollhouse and intend to add several more this year. You can view all 15 on my website at www.cr2s.com and go to the menu line Video Tutorials. I am currently writing a monthly article in the American Miniaturist magazine on electrical wiring and am on my 5th article. I will be teaching an electrical class this year at the Dallas Miniature Showcase, October 21st, 2021, and one at the Chicago International Miniature Show in April of 2022. I travel to individuals' homes to wire their displays and will be in South Carolina, Illinois, Indiana, and California later this year. But most important is, I answer my phone, and you have a live person that lives in the United States of America that speaks English that you can call for help with electrifying your dollhouse. Even more so, I very much enjoy what I do, and I get a strong feeling of satisfaction being able to solve most of your questions, and all of this is free. So my number one tip is